Thank you. It's really great to see so many folks out here tonight to hear about all the work that's been done by the City of Manitou Springs, and several of our regional partners are here with us tonight. And we have our state senator, Mr. Bernie Herpin, right here in the front row. Thank you for being here, Senator. We appreciate having you. And especially this time of year with so much going on up in Denver. It's probably a welcome break for you, I would think. So again, it's great to see so many folks here, and we're going to try and keep it brief. We're going to have some presentations here, probably be somewhat like drinking from a fire hose with the amount of information that'll be coming. We want to save as much time as possible for some questions and answers. And if there's any message here I hope that people come away with is a cautious optimism. Because the truth is, the first and highest priority is always going to be to protect life and safety. And despite all the wonderful work we're going to hear about that's been done and will be ongoing for the next several months to try and mitigate the flood potential that we're facing, the truth is that we are still living under a threat. And I think we all know that. The main factor which none of us can control is the weather. And so we have to really be ever vigilant, be prepared, know what's going on, be aware of what the weather's like, have whether you use apps for your cell phone or a weather radio or just a weather watcher. You know, be aware of what's going on, have a plan to get yourself to safety and out of harm's way. At the same time, we're going to find here tonight there's been a lot of great work that's been done, and it really should give us a real leg up on this rainy season, this summer tourist season. And I'm really thinking that if we can come away prepared, yet cautiously optimistic that we're going to have a great summer here in Manitou Springs. I'm hoping that's the message we can all take away here tonight. So, by way of brief introduction, tonight we have with us Sally Clark, our El Paso County Commissioner, and Mr. Jack Benson, our City Administrator here in Manitou Springs, and Roger Miller, who's been doing a wonderful job as our Flood Recovery Manager. Bruno Pothier, our Public Works Director, will be speaking tonight, as well as Joe Ribeiro, Manitou Springs Police Chief. Randy Perkins is a fire captain in our Manitou Springs Fire Department. John Chavez from El Paso County Stormwater Quality Coordinator. Mr. Dave Watt will be speaking tonight from CDOT, who's done a lot of wonderful work for us. Leslie Lewis will be speaking on behalf of the Manitou Springs Chamber of Commerce, telling us all the good things that they're doing is to get our business community ready for this summer. Dan Stewart, former mayor of Manitou Springs, and so much more, will be speaking on behalf of the Manitou Emergency Relief Fund, a wonderful organization that's been stood up here to help us. And Karen King will be speaking from the Community Animal Response Team, informing us on things we can do to keep our pets safe and out of harm's way and protected. So with that, I don't want to take any more time. I'd like to hand it over to Jack Benson, and we'll get the program going, and we'll have time for questions after each of the entities make their presentation. Jack?
Thanks. Myself too, it's really great to see a lot of you show up today. I think we've got a lot of information for you, but most important is the question and answer piece. This is your time to really ask questions, and basically we'll try to give you the answers. I think you're going to see a lot of work getting done between now through the summer, but we've got some really accelerated deadlines to try and get ready for our early May rainstorms. So let me start. And if I could have somebody just turn those lights off, those two switches towards the back wall there. Yeah, that'll help there. Well, not those. Yeah, those could. Those back there. Try. Yo, that works. I had the wrong one. Goes to show you. Oh, I guess I did have it wrong. Would you turn the other one on? I'm the one that's supposed to be in the dark. You're all in the light. So let me start as a recap from last year. As you know, we had roughly 4 or 5 storms. One of our bigger storms started in July 1st. That's the one that actually came down Williams Canyon. And as you all remember, destroyed the two houses that were up at the top of Williams Canyon, 609 and 3 and 4 Narrows. We did have another significant flood on July 10th. That actually went down Highway 24 and then actually damaged the Business 24 going out of the city. So all of you remember that particular flood event. August 9th was our biggest rain event, significant flooding through Williams Canyon, and we had a boatload of other damage to structures, roughly, I think between 10 and 11 structures that were significantly damaged, and then 70 other structures that were between mild and moderate damage. The September 10th storm, that was a storm that just rained all around us. And as you all know, the counties to the north of us really took a beating. And most of the flooding, and we did get damage on that storm, but most of that came from the south and through the Ruxton corridor. So it shows you that we can get rain events and get significant debris and flooding basically coming through our other watershed areas. So the lessons learned from last year, and we're learning them every day. You know, the storms that presented themselves in 2013 were different. Each one had a different presentation. We learned that sometimes it can rain a whole lot in Manitou, but not a lot on the burn scar. And if that happens, we don't have flooding problems. What we did learn is that duration and intensity is the main risk factors. The August 9th storm is a perfect example. That was a ½ inch of rain in roughly a half an hour. When we have that kind of rain, that pretty much starts to translate into 1 and 2 inches of rain per hour, and that's when we start having real problems. So the issue for us, as we looked at all of those things, 3 major problems for Manitou is debris, sediment, and building materials were the kinds of things that got mobilized in these storms and then came down and it started to clog up our stormwater system. The damage, the flows with all of the rock sediment that came down is what really destroyed and tore apart our Gavian Channel. And so as you've gone up Cannon Avenue, you'll see all that damage. And the amount of material that was deposited there took almost a couple weeks to actually get out of there. The other piece is we had to relook at our conveyance facility, the stormwater facility itself, and we found a lot of choke points. That particular stormwater system was designed for about 1,500 CFS, but we had culverts and bridge crossings that cut it down to about 300 CFS. And the problem with that is a piece of plywood, you get in there, plug that up, and then, you know, basically all that water gets kicked out of the channel and it's coming down the highway. Down the street. So, our mitigation strategies, these have kind of evolved out of discussions with we had our flood coalition, so we've had a number of community members get with all of our city staff and basically came up with these mitigation strategies, capture as much of the debris as possible up in the upper reaches of the watershed, and that's what the county and CDOT are going to talk about in a few minutes here. Screen out as much of the mobilized debris as possible using detention structures and ponds. Those are the projects that we've got in play right now to build up in terms of Williams Canyon. We're going to be putting structures in there to help capture that stuff. Minimize damage by slowing channel flow. That's Right Water Engineering looked at our system, redesigned it. They're going to basically help with the grade coming out of there. It's quite steep, and then they're going to be putting a rough bottom to slow the water down, which is key to basically trying to mitigate the damage. Increase channel conveyance throughout and eliminate choke points. We've got plenty of those choke points, and we have the same problem along Fountain Creek, and so we're going to be trying to address both of those. And then reclaim conveyance capacity for Fountain Creek. I know a lot of you have asked, when are we going to dredge out Fountain Creek? It's taken a while to get the funding together to do that, but it's going to happen, and it's happening right now, and I'll be having, it's either Bruno or Roger talk about that. So I'm going to hand this off to Dave Watt. Dave's our CDOT representative, and he's going to talk about the projects that they've done in 2013 and what they're doing for 2014.
Thanks, Jack. I think folks will recognize this slide from this is a Tuesday evening when the wind kicked up. We'll click on through that pretty quick. I'd like to talk about the 2003 completed projects. This is in response to the summer 2012, right after we had the Waldo Canyon fire. That July and September, we started seeing some debris flows and reacted to that with the project. In 2014, Jack just mentioned kind of the couple July events we had, and also the largest one in August that we responded to 2014 projects that are well underway. We'll talk a little about advanced warning systems that we're trying to implement and corridor monitoring. Hope the law enforcement folks here got the email. We had our first call out last night with the National Weather Service, identified some rain going over the Waldo Canyon burn scar, the possibility of heavier rain, and we're erring on the side of caution that we had 4 folks out monitoring the core points, if you will, or the areas along the Ute Pass Canyon where we've had flooding in the past before. So this was the first event last night that we brought out the patrols. Some of the data, 18,000 acres were burned, 346 homes that were burned. That bottom bullet is kind of one of the money ones here. Multiple agencies and jurisdictions impacted. Once a month, there's a regional recovery group with Manitou Springs, El Paso County, put together by Commissioner Clark and members of CSU and Colorado Springs, to where there's a number of organizations representing that the burn area and the effects of the burn scar are crossing many jurisdictional boundaries, and they're impacting a number of different facilities that these jurisdictions are responsible for. So 2013, these are the mitigation responses that were after the 2012 rain events that we had. Over here, this is up at Sand Gulch, up above the elementary school. This is the sediment basin that was built. This is a little bit further down the pass at the Wellington Gulch area. Also, there's a sediment basin that was built where we had debris flows in these areas. The idea with these basins we're seeing, much like this one here, opposite the marijuana store, capturing debris here, stabilizing this slope. That's basically what these debris basins are doing, is trying to capture the debris before it gets onto the highway and causes a problem in that regard. There was also another area after the 2012 events down here. This is below the Rainbow Falls Bridge, where previously, while not attractive but stable slope, the Waldo Canyon flows we were receiving, this area here became unstable. So in 2013, we began stabilizing this slope and armoring Fountain Creek along this area. But we came to find out after the 2013 rain events that even that additional armoring with the increased flows we're receiving, this wasn't cutting it with our first plan was. So we were beefing that up, and I'll show you a slide on that in a moment. This is from the August 9th event. This is the water and debris that came from the Waldo Canyon Creek. We are in the middle of providing a box culvert. I shouldn't say we're in the middle. The box culvert is across the highway now. So the flows that we're getting, that we'll be receiving this summer, will not have the 72-inch culvert that had clogged up and caused this flooding problem here along the highway, and also went down across Manitou Avenue, and that Jack mentioned previously. That water will be captured in a rather large box culvert and kept in Fountain Creek, where it better belongs. The Rainbow Falls Bridge here, this was excessively scoured. You see the rebar. This was not exposed before the August 9th event, and that's basically from the debris that came down from Waldo Canyon Creek and scoured off that concrete and the asphalt and has exposed the rebar here. This is the business loop for 24 Manitou Avenue, also for the August 9th event. We had further damage in one of the September storms. We had the west end of Manitou Springs closed off for about 2 months. That's some of the repairs that we're implementing. Go to the next slide, Jack. So the mitigation repairs that we've been working on, we have a project that we're about to advertise next week. It will be another debris basin, and for CDOT, one of the first, they're called GeoBrug systems. They're basically a wire mesh or net that will capture the debris, timbers, sand and silt and sediment that come down from the Waldo Canyon Creek, and capture that up above Highway 24 before it goes down to the Waldo Canyon box culvert. We think that's going to help capture some of the debris and keep more of that from coming down Fountain Creek. They demand to, like we've had in the past, that went over the Rainbow Falls Bridge. Excuse me, thank you. This picture down here is the box culvert that's under construction currently. The box now does go across both directions of the highway. We just did a traffic switch about a week or so ago. And the contractor, Wildcat Construction, has completed where the structure is all the way across. We're not quite ready to open up the travel lanes, but we anticipate having both lanes of travel in each direction open up by May 3rd is still our target. Our contractor is very committed to honoring that contractual commitment. We've completed the repairs on Manitou Avenue Business Loop. We will be having a further project to repair this damage later this fall, where we're going to get the bridge rail replaced, work on this outer part of the bridge deck, and get that repaired. That should be later this fall. This area here, you can see the Rainbow Falls Bridge in the middle of the picture there. These are a series of drop structures, and trying to control the grade here to where the water will stay in the creek and not eat away at this embankment. And that work has been recently completed as well. The advanced warning system we mentioned. Last summer we had a lot of patrols that were out and had equipment staged, Jersey barriers and that sort of thing to try to close off the highway. What this will be coming out in the June advertisement is a series of gates, much like you see going to a railroad crossing, to where the gates could be lowered. They'll be lowered manually, but that'll allow us to close off the highway in the event of flooding quicker and easier for the maintenance crews. We're going to spots up here in Cascade where we're going to be able to close off the highway, and down here in Manitou Springs as well. What you don't see here is we do have some cameras that have already been installed in the Waldo Canyon Creek. That's also part of this advanced warning system. We're looking at installing also in Williams Canyon, and these will be available for law enforcement officials to gauge whether or not we have heavy flows coming down these canyons. Williams Canyon and Waldo Canyon have proven to be they're dangerous. We're getting a lot more water and a lot more debris than was ever happening before, roughly a factor of 10 times the water, and then sometimes you can even double that for what's called a bulking factor. That's a fancy way of saying the debris that's coming down in these increased flows is taking up more space. This is a schematic of where we're going to install the gates. Down here at Serpentine Drive in Manitou, that's where the new roundabout has been placed. Up here at Cave of the Winds. Fountain Avenue up here in Cascade, and one more back up here where you pass connection to Chipeta Park Road. The flood event monitoring, we are now at the point where we're conversing with the National Weather Service on a daily basis. I mentioned earlier, last night we had our first event where we called out and notified law enforcement officials and public officials that we were monitoring the area, and if it did get to a point where we need to close the highway, we were able to do that. The equipment is staged up there along the pass, and the crews have done their practice drills and are ready to do that if it's necessary. Active monitoring on Highway 24 by CDOT personnel. Again, that was the first night last night, and we will be doing continued maintenance of the debris basin and culverts. Project cost, we've probably spent over $5 million. That doesn't account for the debris cleanup that we've been doing in the channels, in the culverts, and areas where we've had road scour that is coming down from the increased flows from Waldo Canyon and the other basins that are spilling onto Highway 24. And Jack, you want to say questions at the end, or?
Actually, I thought what we would do here, I thought we would do, since we have major entities that are talking about their projects, that we could take some questions as we move from one entity to the next. And so with CDOT standing here, is open to actually having you ask questions if you'd like. So, and I'll have to run around. There's a microphone right up there, if you could go ahead and turn on. Is it on?
With the box culvert, being one of the businesses further along Fountain Creek, how much do you anticipate increased flow from the water coming through the new box culvert into Fountain Creek?
The box culvert's not going to increase the amount of flow to Fountain Creek. It will get the water to Fountain Creek rather than going along the highway and back into Fountain Creek at the Rainbow Falls Bridge. But post-Waldo Canyon fire, the Waldo Canyon Basin was one of the areas that burned rather intensely. The runoff there we're seeing is about, in fact, 10 times more than what was there before the Waldo Canyon fire. And this culvert is sized to handle that 1.5-inch event that the Waldo Canyon Basin saw last August night. It's not creating any water, but it's getting it into the creek rather than go down the highway, if that makes sense to you. With that, this is a companion project, is this debris basin and debris mesh or net I mentioned earlier. That's going to be a project that's going to be starting up yet this spring, that we're going to try to capture that debris about 1,000 feet up above Highway 24 before it comes down under Highway 24 back into Fountain Creek.
Okay. Being one of the businesses that actually spans Fountain Creek, our concern is if we've got a lot more water coming through, that affects our building.
There is more water coming into Fountain Creek than was coming before we built the box culvert, is what I'm trying to say.
But you're anticipating less debris because of the catchments?
Because of the debris and catchments, and because of that debris net we're building up at Waldo Canyon Creek, we think we're going to do a better job of capturing debris than that was coming down to the highway and down into Fountain Creek from last summer.
I've noticed a lot of erosion on the Serpentine Road and some damage to that bridge that's over there, and I was wondering if there was any plan to do anything on the Serpentine Road at the bottom before the hairpin curve. The bridge looks like it's tilting to the side. And if the structures are any problem if there was a debris flow or a lot of water coming down to those two major structures on the west end of town, the bottling plant and the old house, could those turn into a problem in a major flood?
Jack, you and me, or a little bit of both.
Probably pass it off to Roger.
We've looked at both the Serpentine Bridge and the road there. From what we've seen in inspections on it, the bridge looks in fairly good condition right now. Serpentine, obviously, from the flows that went through there, did some erosion to some of the pavement. But this week we've already started doing the removement of sediment, and actually this week we got quite a bit of that section actually complete.
And then with the houses that are down there, I know we live on the west end of town, and we saw the bottling plant get completely filled up, with sediment, and we didn't know if that structure is still safe, if the house over there is still safe. There was the house that was washed out from underneath. We don't know if that's going to cause a problem and break apart and also cause debris to, fill up Manitou Avenue on that end of town.
We're also going to be removing the sediment around the bottling plant. We have looked at structure, and it looks fairly good. The well that was in the bottom obviously was filled in with sediment, but that area is going to be cleaned up starting next week.
And then I just have one request, which I know you guys have been working on, but definitely keep people from the west end of town. I know they get down there in a panic, but I was down there last year trying to get people up off Manitou Avenue, tourists, get out of the road. And so if you could keep working on that, it would be greatly appreciated.
And Canyon Avenue.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
My concern is Black Canyon and the quarry up in Black Canyon. I'm wondering what its impact is on the flooding, where does it exit, and how long are they going to be removing stones from up there?
That's a good question. Can you answer that, John? We basically we didn't go up as high as the quarry. We certainly have looked at Cave of the Winds. We looked at a project that actually the county will talk about in terms of trying to get some of the sediment out of Williams Canyon there as it's coming down from the quarry. I don't have a good answer for that one. That's one I'll have to follow up on. And if you'd leave your name, I'll get back to you on that because I think it's a great question. One of the things that the Forest Service has done is early on, right after the fire, they did do a number of projects to try and help the watersheds that were damaged severely, Williams Canyon, Waldo Canyon, the two that I'm aware of that were severely burned. So they did a lot of reseeding up there and then mulching up there, but I don't have I don't have an answer regarding the quarry and how much that's a contributor to this.
Really big.
Yeah.
Who should I leave my name with? Who should I leave my name with?
You can actually leave if we can flip a piece of paper over and just write it on the back side, I'll make sure I get back to you.
Thanks.
Leave an email address or a phone number and I'll get back to you. Okay. Good question.
Wasn't there a monitoring system last year in Williams Canyon after the first flood?
And I can have my police chief address that, but the monitoring system really was a lookout that was up at Cave of the Winds. Our fire department also gets deployed up there to actually do eyes-on type of thing. And so one of our trigger points is basically closing the town once we know water is truly moving through the area. You want to add to that?
So the monitoring systems are, one is the person that Jack just talked about. The other is that there is a rain gauge, and that's been referred to as part of the monitoring system. That's up closer to Ridge Road, and it's one of the trigger points for the National Weather Service flash flood warnings is once that rain gauge gets a half an inch in an hour, the warnings go out. One of many sensors that the Weather Service is looking at.
My understanding last year is the eyes-on, whenever it was dark, they couldn't see in the canyon. Is that going to be solved by some other manner of watching the river?
That comes down to yes, I hope. Not this year probably unless the project's, this was a new one to me and I'm glad to hear it that CDOT's looking at putting some sensors up in there. It is an issue for us. One of the good things that by having a person in there is they can hear the water coming. So the person that on the July 10th event, the person that reported that to us told us they saw it and heard it. So there's enough water moving when it's a severe threat like that, we're going to hear it if we have a spotter up there. And then if we can add the electronic sensors, that would be fantastic.
And last but not least, what were you doing on the bridge above Williams Canyon on 24? There was some work up there in the last couple of days.
Was there bridge sensors that were attached to the girders to monitor how they were reacting to live loads? It was merely as a pilot program to find out if we can monitor the bridge movement from our headquarters office. And it was nothing to do with the flooding.
Thank you.
It's just starting out. They just installed those earlier in the week, and we're going to do about a year's worth of monitoring to find out how good that data is and how much that helps us monitoring the bridge.
And if I could follow up, you had asked about additional monitoring. We did talk about having cameras that are being positioned up Williams Canyon, and that's being put up by CDOT, and we'll have access as will the county. I'm sure the EOC will be, Emergency Operations Center will be plugged into those. So we're going to have more than just people standing there listening. We're gonna have a camera equivalent up there.
And will they be able to work at night?
It is a good question. I need to double check if they're gonna work at night or not. I don't want to tell you wrong.
Thank you.
Earlier, most of Manitou, all the bridges have been dug out 100 feet in front and back. I was wondering why Lafayette Bridge wasn't dug out at the same time, since we pretty much got it last flood.
We'll be talking about that here shortly, but we're actually starting the actual debris removal from the entire stretch from arch to arch. We started this week, so we'll be working in that neck of the woods here in the next week or two.
But why wasn't it done while every other bridge was done?
Doug, we'll get to that in just a little bit, but
We'll
this-
explain that.
we're asking for questions to CDOT right now, so, but I'm sure, I know Roger intends to address that here in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Any other questions for CDOT? Let me move on then.
Yes. The pointer, please. Dave, did you take the pointer? All right, let me just make sure I got myself organized here and I know what I'm doing with my equipment. And I currently don't. No point. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get started while Jack is working on that. I don't want to delay. We have a lot of things to cover today, and I certainly don't want to be the holdup here. So the purpose of my presentation today is, next slide, please. There's the pointer. As we all know, the Waldo Canyon fire actually occurred back in June of 2012. I'm not going to reiterate the same facts that Dave mentioned. So. But the point of this slide is we actually, El Paso County started working on flood mitigation in July of 2012, way up the pass at the Ute Pass Elementary School. We did some structure protection. Go ahead and give me the next slide, please. That's a good example of what that looked like. That school looked like on July 29th or July 30th of 2012. El Paso County has looked at a lot of different criteria and considerations when we went forth and started planning what projects we were going to put into the ground. As Jack and as Dave mentioned, protection of human life and property is at the top of the list. But in addition to that, one of the principles of watershed management and watershed mitigation is you need to try to work as high up into the watershed as you possibly can. That's where you start to see some effects and then you work your way down. So topography of an area played a huge role in determining where we could do projects. Likewise, the size of the watershed plays a big role in how much water is going to come down that watershed. And as Dave Watt mentioned, Williams Canyon watershed is a it's actually the largest watershed in the burn area, or I should say the sub-watershed in the burn area. And the city of Colorado Springs Utilities, and El Paso County entered into an agreement back in the fall of 2012 to do a study on just how much sediment and how much water is going to be coming down all of those different drainages. And we used that study. It was called the WARS study, which stands for Watershed Assessment, River Stability, and Sediment Supply. That provided us with a prioritization based on the amount of material that's going to be coming down that we were able to use to start to plan where we were going to put our projects. Obviously, the school here took a big hit right after. That was the first event after the burn. And so we jumped in right away and did a structural protection and a debris removal project there. Next slide, please. Overview of our effort. Over the last 9 months, we have focused our effort in these two areas. I'll first talk a little bit about about the Cascade area, and then I think most germane to this meeting is what we're currently doing down at the Rainbow Falls location. Next slide, please. Above Cascade and throughout Cascade, we're really trying to remove the amount of debris, i.e. the amount of rock, sediment, and trees, and just trash and junk that could potentially come down the creek with the next storms. Here's a couple of examples of, numerous piles of debris and sediment. We're also working on structure protection, trying to protect homes. In the 1960s and 1970s and 1980s, before there was ever a fire, many of these drainages never really flowed except for 1 or 2 times a year, and at that point it was just a little garden hose of a trickle. It's a whole new reality right now. As Dave mentioned, we're seeing flows sometimes 10 times, 15 times the magnitude of what is typical. And of course, we're doing lots of channel improvements. Channel improvements are key to trying to slow down the water and to allow it to infiltrate instead of pick up momentum as it rolls down the hill. Next slide, please. Here's a couple of examples of structure protection. We're using a variety of different mechanisms. On the right here are what we call gabion baskets. They're wire baskets filled with stone. Those are in use at in the Williams Canyon area that are now destroyed. Here are what we call trap bags. They're 4 foot high, 7-year lifespan bags that are all connected together, and they will not move when water hits them. Next slide, please. The bulk of our effort over the last several months has been in Cascade. CDOT focused appropriately, in the Waldo Canyon area, and we took the next step up to take a look at what we can do in Cascade. This slide is rather cluttered, but there's a drainage there, there's a drainage there, and then there's a drainage right here, and another one right here, and they all funnel down to one point. This little area at the bottom is Topeka Avenue North, where Pyramid Mountain Road and Topeka Avenue North meet. And what we've done is we've put in place approximately 36 different structures. All these little bars up here are basically grade control structures, and I'll show you a picture of those. We've also put in some sediment and debris catchment basins where we could fit them. There's not a lot of space up in those channels. And so here's a confluence where two creeks came together, or 2 drainages came together, so we put about a 1 acre pond right there. And then there's another confluence, and we put about a 1 acre pond right there. And the other bits of best management practices that we've been using, these yellow bars, are what we're calling sill areas. And what we've done is we've taken a channel that, due to the erosion, was shaped like a V. Okay, just imagine a channel shaped like a V. And we've now turned it into an open-ended box with a flat bottom and slopes that are wide. What that does is it allows the water to slow down, and it allows it to infiltrate into all that decomposed granite, which results in less amount of water coming down the mountain. Right here at the bottom is a pond that we just started construction this past week. It's going to be about an acre and 1/10 in size, 6 foot deep. It will be below grade. It's not going to be like a dam. And it'll provide about 6 acre-feet of storage for flood and some debris that all comes down the Pyramid Mountain Estates area. As you know, that area was pretty heavily burned, and we're going to be able to maintain this pond. So we've been able to obtain an easement, and the county is going to make sure that we're going to monitor that location, and we're going to make sure that pond remains clean and full of capacity after every event. Next slide, please. Here's an example of grade control. We're working up in the mountains, so I'm avoiding putting a bunch of concrete in the mountains. We want to make it look as natural as possible, but yet effective. What these are is a series of drops, and what we've done is taken a grade and a channel that was very incised and about 20% slope. We've brought it down to about a 10% slope by the use of these grades, and you'll see there's water behind there, so there's some sediment and some water capture that is allowed to happen. There's approximately about 28 of those structures in that mapped area that I just showed you. In addition to that, we were putting erosion control matting, which there's a little bit up there, to keep some of that decomposed granite from rolling down into these structures. Next slide, please. Another couple of examples of grade controls and flattening. This particular one has a low water crossing. That's just a hard low water crossing, so that when water does flow through there, we can still get a vehicle through that particular location. And again, some slopes with the erosion control matting in place. It's all been seeded. I was up there this week. Surprisingly, with all the moisture that we've had, we're starting to see grass growing on there, and that's a really good thing. Next slide, please. Here is one of those 1 acre catchments that we put in place in the channels. That's me standing there. This is about, I'm going to say 8 foot deep, 6 foot deep. This is designed to fill in with sediment over time. And then once it does fill in with sediment, it'll provide a grade control, like those other tiered rocks that I showed you earlier. This is so far high up into the channels. This was one of those where we came in, we built the pond as big as we can. We're not going to be able to maintain that, and that is one of the appropriate measures that we can use. It will still provide grade control once that thing is filled up, and it will still allow water to infiltrate it. Here's an example of where we took the channel. If you look back up in here, there's your V, and we couldn't do this everywhere again. We did it where we could. Now we have a nice flat channel. There are logs about every 7 feet buried in here with a fabric to keep them from eroding out, and they go all the way across this channel. Again, it's just an opportunity for the water to slow down and infiltrate. On the top of Pyramid Mountain Road, about a month ago, we completed this project. After the September events, I'll show you another picture here, but right where these white trap bags are is the cul-de-sac at the top of Pyramid Mountain. When we came in, this was a cut like that. It was a vertical cut, and it just kind of went down the hill. This is a grade control structure. Underneath this fabric, it's all buried riprap, buried rock, 24 to 36 inch diameter, and we have a big rock sill right at the end, dissipate the energy and slow the water down. There's another one down here at the bottom that you can't see. And again, it's to slow the water down and let it to infiltrate as much as possible. Here's another example looking from the top. We also utilized the Pyramid Mountain cul-de-sac to allow some collection of water. As you can see, there's only a little opening right here, and that's about 4 foot. So for some of the minor events, the water will be able to pool in here a little bit and then drain down there versus just rush right across. Next slide, please. In addition to that, in the picture that I showed you, you saw a series of dirt roads up there. And for those of you who know the area, there's a star on the top of Pyramid Mountain, and it's quite an attraction. What we did, this creek, or this road, when we first came up here, there was basically an eroded cut all the way along this edge. And all of that went off that edge and down into Cascade. By putting these berms, or what we call rain bars, across the water now comes down, kicks off, goes into a vegetated area, travels another 50 feet, kicks off and goes into a vegetated area. Again, slow the water down, get it into the vegetated area. Next slide. The closest to home, El Paso County has started working on the Citizens Conservation Corps structure that is above Rainbow Falls. You may recognize the dam. This is what it looked like before we started working. All these trees. This was an old sedimentation and a flood control basin that was built in 1934 by the Citizens Conservation Corps. It was a diamond in the rough. As you know, Manitou Springs is basically at the bottom of the hill, and that canyon is pretty narrow, and there's not a lot of opportunity up that canyon to place a large detention pond. So we decided, let's make this work. Next slide. We came in, it's the same picture, but from on top of the railroad, old railroad track. We removed about 80% of the trees, we realigned the channel, and we removed 3,400 cubic yards of decomposed granite sediment. Next slide, please. Here's a good example. Here's the creek line. That's how high the sediment used to be in that pond. And basically, fortunately for us, we came in December of 2012 after the first series of rains, after the Waldo Canyon fire, and we did a survey of this pond. So we had some elevations before the July and the September. So that gave us an idea how far down we could go. I'm here to say now that as of yesterday, we're back in this pond and we're going to remove another 3 feet of sediment. We found the old drawings and the old designs for this structure and got clearances through the Natural Resources Conservation Services, and we're going to pull another 3 feet of sediment out of here, and we're going to do some reinforcement of those concrete structures that are on both ends. This is to allow more capacity for the flow that is related to the CDOT box culvert. I know there's a lot of concern out there that the CDOT box culvert is going to increase flows. Dave's absolutely right. The flows are coming to Manitou one way or the other, the highway or the creek. The goal is get it into the creek and now use this sedimentation basin to capture some of that sediment and capture some of that debris. Next slide, please. In addition to that, through our partners, the Coalition for the Upper South Platte, there were several structures and some public works structures, i.e. Serpentine, where we came in late in 2012, early 2013, and did some high priority structure protection. And move on, go ahead, next slide, please. And we also evaluated Williams Canyon. If you recall on the second slide I had, topography, access, those sorts of parameters were very important to whether or not we could do a project. We hired an engineering consultation firm by the name of URS, and we evaluated everything from the gate at the bottom of Cave of the Winds, all the way up past the Forest Service boundary. And I don't need to tell any of you, because I'm sure you've all hiked it, that canyon is pretty steep, and it's once you're in it, there's not much room to move around in there. We evaluated it for ponds, we evaluated it for these geogroves, these big nets. We met with the carries, the managers. The issue with the Cave of the Winds is it's hollow. It's Swiss cheese all in here, and that's what makes the attraction. So the ability to go in and put in 40, 60 foot long tie-ins to hold the net up would have taken a long time in evaluation and many dollars that we really didn't have. So we evaluated cleaning out the lower 3,000 linear feet of all of the debris and get that out of there. But in order to do that, we would have had to build a road, remove the debris, and then tear the road back out. I got 3 quotes on that. All of that was over $800,000 to do, and it would have only been a benefit for one event. So from a cost-benefit standpoint, I had to wring my fist on this, and I thought we need to do something else. So we started working with the city of Manitou Springs, which Roger's going to talk about, the great project that's now at the bottom end of Williams Canyon where there's good access. And in addition to, we talked with CDOT about, hey, is there anything you guys can do for an early warning system? And Dave talked about that. So we may not be able to get in there and put in big nets and big ponds in that location, but we're doing everything we can in that area because access, we have to be able to maintain some of these structures and build them, and access in that canyon is pretty tricky. My message about Williams Canyon, keep out of Williams Canyon this year. Stay out of Williams Canyon. If it starts flowing, you have nowhere to go, and you will get caught up in the net down below. So please, communicate that. Stay out of Williams Canyon. All right, next slide. Basically what I just said. The other issue was archaeological clearances in Williams Canyon was pretty tough, and fortunately, there's other options available. Next slide. Just a real brief summary of the cost so far. I'll just say we're at about $3.3 million of what we've spent so far to do mitigation. Next slide. Our next series of projects is in Cascade. This is Topeka Avenue North. This is where our pond is in the construction phase. The library and the fire station at the very bottom of this drainage. Obviously, protecting the fire station for Cascade is a high priority. So in the next few weeks, we're going to start a channel stabilization project over this 3,000 linear feet of channels. Grade control, a couple of debris basins in there where we can fit them, and basically just channel realignment. And that's just a real quick spending summary for the Cascade Middle Channel. We haven't spent that money yet, but we're working on getting that spent associated with, we had 2 big events. There was the Waldo Canyon event, and then there was the September 2013 event. And from funding sources, those are treated as 2 different projects. I think I'm done. Yep, that's it. Commissioner?
I'll just say a couple words if you want to. I think we're done with the presentation, Jack, so you can get lights. If there's any questions for El Paso County, we're obviously going to be here and around. You can ask now, but I know we're on kind of a time crunch to get through everyone. Also, R.C. Smith, R.C., where are you? He stepped out. Oh, he's outside. He's usually not hard to find. But R.C. Smith is our recovery manager and for El Paso County. And he could, oh, there you are, back there in the purple shirt. That's R.C. And he's our El Paso County recovery manager. So if you need to get in touch with someone or ask additional questions, he can put you in touch with the right person. Do you have any questions right now for us? Or should we just move right along? Just to let you know, we're doing, I think, a great job at trying to collaborate with all the different entities. As you can see, as Dave pointed out in one of his slides, it's an extremely complicated process with Forest Service, Colorado Springs Utilities, Manitou Springs. We're working with Green Mountain Falls, even though they're upstream. Chipeta Park and Cascade are unincorporated areas, so that falls under the county. But then we have the Forest Service, we've got NRCS, we've got all these different nonprofits at the table too, with Rocky Mountain Field Institute and Coalition for the Upper South Platte. So we're doing what we can to make sure we pool our resources and leverage all the dollars we're able to, and you can be assured that I'm pounding on the table and flying back to Washington, D.C. when needed to try and get us more money to be able to continue the flood mitigation. So thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to Jack.
Actually, Sally, I do have a question.
Oh, you do?
Do we have any update on additional NRCS EWP funding? I know we were putting in a second request to the federal government about that.
As far as I know, there's no additional emergency watershed protection money available at this time. Colorado has gotten additional money into the state because of the flooding events that happened in September, but most of that is actually going to the northern part of the state, which was hit so significantly during those September floods. That doesn't mean we're not still asking for it, and that takes essentially an act of Congress, which we know works in slow ways. But we're still communicating with both of our state senators, Udall and Bennett, as well as Congressman Doug Lamborn and the entire Colorado delegation in the House. So we're continuing to work through it, and I know that there's a push to create a special fund that deals specifically with EWP money, because it's a bucket that doesn't get filled until there's an emergency, and so that bucket is always empty. And there's a significant amount of money that went to the Hurricane Sandy folks, which we will see because they haven't spent a lot of their money yet. It's millions and millions of dollars. So at this point, no, but we're continuing that conversation and continuing to ask for more.
Thanks, Sally. Again, my name is Roger Miller, and good evening. I'm going to talk about two projects that are significant here in Manitou Springs, and as everybody's been mentioning, we're kind of at the bottom of the food chain, but we're the ones who receive the water. Our first project we're going to talk about is Williams Canyon, and I have put some graphics over there, and you can actually see the project a little closer when we're done with the meeting. But this is the project that they've all been alluding to. As the water comes out of Williams Canyon, as you remember, the channels, so we have more flow through that, and we can actually have a wider cross section. And then we're going to be replacing the Narrows Bridge with a larger conveyance opening, so again, we will not have the debris catching up in these structures. The phase 3, which basically is installing what we're going to call surface flow protection walls and floodgates along canyon from the top all the way down to where Park goes off towards Soda Springs Park and then down towards Lover Lane. So we're going to be working with the homeowners and the businesses to put in some of these, what we call surface flow protection gates to help them out. Our contractor for this is Perco Rock Construction, and they're out of Utah. And this is something this is what they do. They know how to build these kind of channels in these kinds of conditions, and we're really pleased to have them on board. Phase 1, basically, as we're saying, is going to start May 1st. Substantial completion. We've moved this a little bit because of the start date, but actually you'll see the completion of phase 1 will be done the end of July. You'll see us moving into phase 2 a little bit sooner because of the way we've been able to work with them on our construction schedule. We're hoping we'll have this done before mid-September. And then phase 3, actually we're going to start working on that here in the next few weeks with our consultant, Wright Water, to actually start put together some of these surface flow protections for Canyon. Some of the things that people were concerned about is, wow, what are we going to do with access with the little Switzerland neighborhood, which is up above? We're actually going to have a temporary right-in, right-out on US 24. And we've already had a neighborhood meeting last week with them, and they're actually pleased with the progress we're making and how we're going to go about this. And we'll be working with CDOT on this particular access point. We'll have a closure from Canyon Avenue right at the base down there, all the way through Alpine to the top of it. And we're begging you, please do not come into this zone while we're in construction. We're asking that you no longer be doing any of your morning walks up the canyon because we're going to have a lot of construction equipment up there. The road's actually going to be closed, and we're working with the two gentlemen who are in the stone house for how we're going to get them access. We've notified police and fire about these closures and the timeframes. Now, we're going to be working 6 days a week, 12-hour days to get this project done, just the first phase of it. So it's going to be a lot of construction and a lot of work in a very short time frame. This is probably the thing that is going to be the most noticeable thing that you're going to see here in town. And we want to explain this, the Fountain Creek project. This has taken a little bit of work to get this through the FEMA process. Basically, FEMA generally only pays for sediment removal around public structures. Let me remind you, they only pay generally for public structures to have any kind of debris removed from them. We had 7 structures in phase one that they allowed us to actually do the debris removal in. And that was about 4,000 cubic yards of sediment. And that's basically, they allowed us to go 100 feet upstream and downstream of each one of those structures and to remove that debris. And that was about 4,000 cubic yards of sediment. That was just phase 1 to start. While we were doing that, we went through a process to basically convince them that we needed to move the rest of the sediment and actually lower the channel down to the previous pre-flood conditions. Phase 2, which has actually started this last week, is to remove roughly 16,000 cubic yards of sediment and cobble, of which 4,100 of it is the remaining shoulder sediment between those bridges and through the private properties from arch to arch. We're going to be lowering the channel. We really don't think there's going to be 16,000 cubic yards because the creek actually itself is starting to repair itself. We're thinking it's going to be around 12,000 or less that we're going to be removing. Now that process is not just going out there and putting equipment in there and digging out a channel. It's actually there's a lot more science to it. We have to really be careful about, as you've heard, grade control. We have to watch how we actually lower this and what we do to the side of the banks and how the cross-section of that channel really actually works. Because if we remove too much, we actually can create what's called head cutting, and it actually works itself backwards and starts to cut into the banks or to the structures alongside the creek. So we actually had a surveyor go out there at the very beginning, survey the existing profile, match that against known existing cross-sections and elevations pre-flood, so that we could actually make sure that the contractor gets us down to the elevation. So it's not guesswork, there's actually a little bit of science into it. We also have what's called a geomorphologist and a habitat specialist who's actually helping us right now go through the creek and make sure that the cross sections as we do it don't create any more damage. And that we put in what are called cross channel weirs and V channels and a number of other things to actually stabilize the channel so it doesn't actually start to back cut up the hill, back upstream. So again, phase 1 and phase 2 are what we're calling emergency sediment removal. Phase 3, which will not take place immediately, but after the scars started to heal up there, which could be anywhere from 5 years or more, we'll actually start to come back in and put in some of that fish habitat. Now, just to let you know, we have a busy beaver already out there doing his own work, creating fish habitat for himself. And we're working with him on a daily basis. We've already seen brown trout and rainbow trout already in the ponds that he's created. And those ponds actually, I was joking with John earlier, is actually helping us with the sediment removal to drop out the sediment as we're doing it. So our little civil engineer from Mother Nature is doing a great job, and we're working hand in hand with him at the moment.
Did he get his permits run?
He got his permits. He was way ahead of us on that. So what we're doing is we started that this last week, and we've already made great headway. If you get a chance, I would say next week, go up from the bridge Serpentine down to the roundabout and look at the work that's already been accomplished that we did in the first week. The first week we already removed roughly 450 cubic yards of sediment in that first area. So you're going to see some of the work that's been done in there. We're going to be working basically 7 to 5. We're estimating, I think Bruno me figured out probably around 1,000. It's not going to be the 1,600 that was in the paper, but roughly around 1,000 truckloads that'll be sediment that'll be brought up to Public Works and just put up there. So here's kind of what the project's starting to look like already, and I want to point out, there we go. Which one is it? This used to be where the sediment was, coming from through the creek here, all the way up this high and all the way across the bank. It was a trapezoidal channel, and it came back on this side up about this high. As of today, this is what the creek bank already looks like now, and the flows that are going through there. And this is back, we used photographs of the work that Pete Gallagher had done, Finn Up, who had done the creek restoration and habitat replacement a few years ago. So we actually have good photographic evidence of how to get this back to where it was. But we're also able to put in some of these structures that allow us to do the grade control that John had talked about earlier. This is one of those areas where this line used to go out like this and then straight down. Now you can see that we've actually have the nice channel back in here, and we have a nice grade coming back up. This has already all been cleaned out. We've actually already started to seed some of this area. And then this is another area where you can see that we had sediment this high, upwards of 3 to 4 feet, coming straight down like this, and in this channel back up here, and across and all the way out here. And you can see that we've already removed this much sediment through this area, right down below, and then I think there might be one more. If not, we're not. So right down below this is where we had the beaver doing his work, and we really appreciated the work. So again, we're going to be working hand in hand with him, and I'm going to let Bruno now talk about all the other projects that we're doing.
Good evening, Bruno Potier, Public Works Director for the city. So, as you know, there was two flood, the August 9 and September 12. August 9 was pretty much done directly by the city, no support from the federals. The September 12 had the presidential declaration, which gave us access to FEMA funding. So basically what I have here are the PW, which are the project worksheets from FEMA, and we've been working on those for about 8 months. Public Works mostly, I have about 7 people. We are a group of about 18. There is 6 people which are in water and sewer, which are still working on the city. The rest has been done by about 6 to 8 people working with contractors and trying to do major work. So if I go, so basically each FEMA project has a category, and I won't go through all the categories, but basically A and B are emergency debris removal. We did a lot of work ourselves. The FEMA estimation amount has been given to us by FEMA. They came on site, look at the project and estimate it, gave us an amount. Sometimes the amount is lower, sometimes the amount is higher, but most of those projects, actually C, B and C, D, are projects which are being reimbursed on invoices. So if it's more expensive, then we present an invoice which is a little bit more expensive and we pay for it. The match of the city, I will take an example, the first one, which is category A, general debris removal. We started, we have been working on that, like I said, about 8 months. We started on this one. As you can see, there is a city match of $22,000. This city match actually has been pretty much covered by payroll and the hours and time equipment, which is all FEMA rates applied to this project. So to go really quickly, general debris removal, and all those are completed. The CMPL means completed. Everything which is green is completed, which is pretty good. We have about 12 of them, so which are completed. Emergency, let me see. Rockstone bank stabilization, for instance, is at the top of Rockstone. If you go all the way to the top and it says do not enter, you keep on going. Or you walk, you park, you walk. We actually did shotcrete. Of course, the road repair, paved millings. Pony at New Colbert, we just finished it. You probably all noticed it in front of the library. We have quite a lot. It takes a lot of time. The problem with the FEMA projects, first I want to say that we really, really appreciate what FEMA has done. They brought us a representative of FEMA, which has done all the PW, which has done an amazing job with us. He was there, he told us how to do it, he told us what we could not do, because nobody really in the public works department had ever been in this type of situation where actually we had to follow federal rules. So we had some training, and they really did an amazing job, and I want to thank them for this work that they did. Oops, should we go back now? All right, go back. The Canyon Avenue 7x7 box culvert was really damaged. All the joints, basically it's a concrete culvert which is 7 foot by 7 foot, and which is by section of about 10 foot or 8 foot a section. And there is joints, seams actually, and all those seams got actually destroyed by the flood of September 12. So we had to go back inside it and redo all the seams. And that took about 3 weeks, 4 weeks for the mason actually to redo the seams. The Spring Street culvert is a replacement of a culvert also. Crystal Hill Boulevard repairs actually is a small part of it right now, where we actually we are going to start another project which is actually the replacement of the culvert which goes under the overpass. So when you are coming from Manitou Avenue and you start going up Crystal Park and there is the overpass on top of you, we are going to be replacing this culvert. We believe it's undermined. We haven't seen if it's undermined yet because we haven't been able to go into it. It's supposed to be starting pretty soon, but that means that Crystal Hill is going to be closed. So for people who live in Crystal Hill, you will have to go the other way. Hopefully, well, I should say hopefully, the culvert, if we can see and identify that there is undermining under the culvert, then FEMA will come back, estimate the project, and figure out if they want to pay for it, which would be pretty good, because the cost right now is about $60,000. For your information, also, I don't know if anybody mentioned it before, our match is 12.5%. 12.5% is paid by the state, and the FEMA pays 75%. The Pawnee Avenue Pound is on top of Pawnee, another one that you can go all the way up and look at it. That's basically catch the water coming down the mountain and kind of slow it down, and then after the water runs down in the middle of Pawnee all the way down. Now those are the projects, which is interesting. I have a red R on project, but anyway, there is 6 projects which are not completed. I separated the bottom one because the bottom one actually is going to be matched with the enterprise fund, the water enterprise fund. But to basically the category B1, which is the SP14V1, which is the first one on top here, that's the one that Roger Miller just spoke about. The city match is estimated at $80,000, but it's still a question of how much debris we take out. If we take 16,000 cubic yards, it might be discussed. If we take 12,000 or 10,000 or 8,000, then the match drop accordingly. The guardrail on Geneva Trail is going to be rebuilt with a little retaining wall. The thing which most people have been anxious, including me, to get started is the road repairs. We presented a first proposal to FEMA for a couple of contractors, and they believed it was too high. So the estimated amount was at $348, but they thought it was too high, so we had to go back to rebid it. And we came out much lower to about $240,000. I don't know if it was the season or because it was maybe the asphalt dropped slightly in cost in the winter. And the contractor have tendency to buy their asphalt in advance. So we are at about $230. That's going to reduce our city match accordingly. But we are supposed to be starting, I will say, probably the second weeks of May. We are still, the problem with some of the project with FEMA is that you cannot start a project which qualifies with FEMA before the PW is signed. If you do, they don't pay. So we don't want to take the chance to fix, for instance, Canyon and Park, which is in a really bad shape. Everybody who goes to the post office knows that there is some holes there. But we can't do anything. I mean, we can form meetings in it, but we can't re-asphalt it, because if we start working on it then they might come back and say, well, too bad you already started it. So we are really careful with that, and it's an inconvenience. Kumar Pass has a lot of potholes that we need to fix, but we can't fix them really. What do I have? City Hall, basically, where we are here, City Hall got raised yesterday, about 6 inches up, so now it's flat. It's amazing, actually, when you think about it. But it was never flat, really. But now it's flat. Then we have the Schreiber Park and Memorial Park water intake. That is somewhat tied up to this project, to the first project, the removal of the creek, because when we did the 100 feet on both sides of the bridges, we didn't address in front of the parks. But Memorial Park and Schreiber, actually, the pump are in the creek, and they are under the sedimentation, so they do not pump. So we can't water. At Memorial Park, we address the situation by creating a new tap on drinking water, and we just finished it actually last week. Schreiber, we had to reinstall the gate to be able to make it functional again, and that's probably we realized that the moat had been dug. We cleaned the moat. It was pretty, well, let's say, put it nicely, not very pretty. And but now the water is back into it, and we can water Schreiber. And the last one, you probably saw already the equipment. That's this one, is the water main in Fountain Creek at Soda Spring Park. Basically, this one is a very different project than all the other one because it's a category F. All the project, when you have a project for FEMA, you have to replace existing. You can't improve, you can't build less, you have to rebuild exactly what you have. Which means that if you have a road, let's say that you have a pipe which is 36 inch with discharge into a 24, you have to put back a 36. You can't put a 24 going into a 24, which will make sense. You can't. That's the way it is. So anyway, but this one here, actually, we did negotiate with FEMA and said that we didn't want to run the water on this line, existing line, as a PRV, which is a pressure reducing valve, is sitting in Soda Spring Park and cross the creek and goes toward Manitou Avenue, just about where the Dutch kitchen is. And this line actually is about only a foot deep into the creek and was damaged in the September 12 flood. So we shut it down, and since then we had only a feed from the mineral spring going up to the flats and the upper part of canyon. Now we actually we are rerouting this water line toward Tubby's. So you have a drilling rig, you probably saw it if you drove by Soda Spring Park, but they just started yesterday. They are putting the rig in it, and they're going to be drilling all the way to Tubby's, come back, tie up, connect, and then we can abandon the piece which is going to the creek, so which will protect us considerably in case of another flood. And I think that's pretty much it. Well, I thought there was a total somewhere. Well, yes, the total is here. The match for the city is shows 177,570, but like I said, some of it has been already paid by salaries as a match. Some of it would change in function of what some of those projects comes out. So that's pretty much where we are at. We did about $1.6 million worth of work, and that's what FEMA gave us. Will give us, or somewhat close, and that's what the match is.
Thanks. Before we move on, the police chief is actually coming up next, but since we went through all of the projects that are going on in Williams Canyon and Fountain Creek, I thought we'd take questions on these particular projects.
I only have one question. You talked about the Rainbow Falls catch pond. Is that east or west of the falls?
It's west of the falls.
So higher up the highway?
It's approximately right at the eastbound exit into Manitou Springs.
It still seems to me that there's going to be a lot more water flowing down Fountain Creek through the box culvert that's being installed. I'm wondering if there's been any thought of creating a large catchment basin on Serpentine Drive, maybe during the flood season, closing that road down at Manitou, building a large dam and catching the water so that all the water doesn't come crashing down into Manitou along with water from Williams Creek. Can you address that?
You've actually been sitting in our meetings, haven't you? We actually are working right now with FEMA to create a long-range plan and looking specifically at a master drainage plan that would address exactly what you're talking about. That has been talked about for a number of years, and we're going to be working through that process here very quickly, not only with FEMA but the state, with our other partners here, CDOT and El Paso County. So we are looking at something down there at Serpentine as a long-term solution, and we'll be looking at other potential mitigation projects throughout the downtown area also. So yes, we will be looking at something like that.
What about short-term for this summer flooding?
We don't have that whole structure. If you look at it, is probably between a $12 to $18 million project to do that project. So right now we're trying to, we have to move that project through the process, get it designed. We have to do the studies to get that basically approved. So unfortunately, we won't have it in place. But a number of the other projects that we've all been talking about should help us out quite a bit.
What about taking just a dirt dam there with the sediment you're taking out of the creek temporarily to do that to help until you get the $12 million project going?
Well, unfortunately, I think you've probably seen what's happened to the dirt that's already along the hills. The power of the water would basically just scour that out immediately and would all end up with everywhere we've been removed. So this will be an earth and rock dam type process that we eventually put up there if that's what's deemed to be the solution. So I know that there's a lot of people would like to see it sooner, but there is a process, unfortunately, we have to go through to get that designed, and then it affects the whole tributary area. So it's not just for Manitou that we have to study this, it's all the way upstream and downstream.
Actually, let me follow up on that. I think Serpentine kind of functions as a detention pond anyway. What we found is that all of that sediment actually collected in there, and we actually put a row of sandbags across there. So I think as a temporary measure, we could continue to do that. As soon as we start seeing that back up again, we could actually put some sandbags down there and try to keep it contained. It will close Serpentine for that period of time, but I think we all agree that having a temporary closure makes sense.
Well, as long as the CDOT's rebuilt west exit holds up, then Serpentine's in play. But it's essential we have a west exit out of town in case we have another fire or any other type of event. So our ability to work with Serpentine is directly related to our confidence in the west ramp. And so, that water all came down the highway last year. It did end up in Manitou, but the debris ended up in the highway. So the question, we don't really know how that section from the Waldo outflow down to Rainbow Falls functions, because it really didn't have a chance to function last year, much like our 7x7 box culvert in the August flooding. The blockages were up above there and the water never had a chance. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. And I think Serpentine is a real opportunity for us, as Roger mentioned, moving forward. And I think it'll operate as a natural floodplain, and it's just a matter of volume, whether or not it contributes to damage in the town.
If I might too, I think that what CDOT is doing, we know that we need to slow that water down and remove the debris. The box culvert was essentially to convey more water and essentially debris so that it doesn't get clogged. But that's why, as Dave Watt from CDOT pointed out, they're doing work up in Williams Canyon, and they're working on that project as well to slow that water and to take the debris out. In addition to that, the water that might come down other channels that will funnel down into Fountain Creek from upper into from Cascade and up farther west. That's why we're working at Pyramid Mountain and Wellington Gulch and some of these gulches that all drain into Fountain Creek. You're in a natural funnel down here. You're at the bottom of the funnel, and everything comes right down into Manitou. So all these drainages are priorities, and I know that CDOT has been very much aware, but I think as Mayor Schneider pointed out, and Carol Acarius from the Coalition for the Upper South Platte will tell you, dams are built to fail. So all the structures that we're trying to build other than the debris nets, are below ground, below grade, so nothing will fail and all of a sudden you have a wall of water coming into Manitou.
Just to add on briefly, with the debris net going up in Waldo Canyon, it's our property we purchased from Summit Ministries. With that basin and that net, we will be building that like the other systems so that we can get in there and maintain those. That's something we're adding to the contract that we currently have with TZAC, so that we can periodically this summer get in, clean out those basins and have that ability to capture some of that debris up on, before it gets into Fountain Creek and before it gets onto Highway 24 and before it gets into Manitou Springs. So we're trying to capture the things before it gets down into the town and into the Highway 24 and into the creek.
Basically, we do pretty well with water, even high water flows. It's the debris that has been the X factor that's really, so that's why all the work you're hearing about here tonight is designed to pull that debris out of the water. So when the water gets to town, it's relatively clean, free of that debris, and much as you've seen during some of the high water events, when it's just water, we seem to be able to handle it pretty well. So that's the gist of all the work.
Okay, I have lots of questions. I'm going to settle for two. I'm really more concerned about the riparian buffer than I am floods. It's a natural event. It's like fire. If we think we can control it, okay. But what I've been seeing is all of our big trees going down. And the trees, in my understanding, as you know who I am, most of you guys know who I am, is that the trees hold the bank. And one tree in particular that was just, to me, needlessly taken down was the tree at Lover's Lane and Canyon. It's on the inside of the curve. The water hits the wall. They took down that tree. Now, by your own, verbiage up here, the trees, loss of the trees equals 10 times more water. Well, how many big trees have we taken down? How much more water are we adding to it? Probably not a big issue. But those trees, the flood issue is maybe 10 years if we're lucky with climate change. But the trees could live for another 75 years. We're in a time of great climate change. We don't even know if we can grow trees that big anymore. Why are we taking the trees down? That's my first question.
All right, I'll address that. We're not taking all the trees down. We've taken basically 2 large trees down that were in that area that were in danger of starting to go over with undermining under their root structure. When you look at the effect of these trees that we have, and again, we're trying to limit the number of trees that we take out, because actually, as you mentioned, they actually help stabilize some of our walls. In those particular cases right there, if you look at that particular corner in the hydrology that was going on, we had a large sediment load that was occurring because of the back eddy effect that is caused by those trees. That back eddy and that effect there basically causes the water to leave the channel and go down Lover's Lane, and it causes a lot more damage to the structures in that particular area. One of the things that we've just recently submitted another project for through what's called the CDBG Disaster Relief Grant is to remove some of the structures, and I'm going to call garages behind Lover's Lane, directly behind the Commonweal. We've already working with that particular landowner to remove those, to open up that channel so that.
That's why when we look at serpentine as a potential mitigation, it's directly tied to our confidence in that west ramp. And really, until we have an event and see how all this works, we'll just have to be vigilant.
And on Butte and Minnehaha, we have no way even on roads to get back into town on our side of town. We have to go all the way over to Ruxton Avenue even. So if there's a way maybe to figure out a way we could get around, if we have to evacuate on foot, if there's a way out that way too, but rather than having to go down on Manitou Avenue.
If it's a flash flood and you're up on
we want
Minnehaha, don't leave.
Oh no, we want to be up there, yeah.
That's a very good segue into Chief Ribero's part of this. But Ray, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, there's a road. They put a gate on it above Manitou Terrace, atop a cave behind Canyon. And it's an access road. It came in handy during the summer, but they put gates on it with locks. I don't know who's in charge of that, but it was handy before they put the gates up so I could leave and then come back home.
Yeah, I can address this one. Actually, this road is not really a platted road, or a developed road, I should say. It's only, we just actually worked on it last year to make evacuation possible for the people who live on canyon. It's not supposed to be used regularly because it's pretty tough. You need to have a four-wheel drive truck actually to take it. And then it comes to the flats. I don't know if most people know Manitou Terrace is when you take Cave and you go up, you arrive to Manitou Terrace, you take a sharp left, and then you're on Manitou Terrace, and then there's a gate. This road after kind of crawl its way up to the flats where the storage area is. And that's actually for emergency services. First reason that this road was reopened, which we did, was to have emergency services to come down in case you cannot access through the lower part of canyon. And then eventually, if it's a major catastrophe where there is no access for the people to leave through canyon and park, will be to actually evacuate through this side of the city. But it's never been the intention for the city to open this road to the public. So that's why we put the gates.
Okay, it's right outside behind the cabin, so it came in handy twice when Highway 24 was closed. I was able to get out, get to a doctor's appointment.
You need to, if you have a good four-wheel drive, you can make it.
Oh yeah.
You could make it.
It's parked right outside the gate. Thank you.
I live up there where Ray lives, and there was an occasion where they wouldn't let me back in town after work.
We're gonna talk about
So I was wondering,
that.
is there any way that the Cape Avenue people can go up to Hickenbottom Flats and access by feet, you know, we can walk down into our neighborhood at that time? Because they had the highway blocked, but if we could just get up to Hickenbottom Flats, we could get home, if we could park on Hickenbottom Flats.
There is a lot of that, and we're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
It's a much bigger answer than can we or can't we. So most of the news has been really good so far. I am very excited about it because the work that's being done, if we had that in place last year, my hope is we wouldn't have seen the kind of things that we saw last year. What I want to reiterate for you is the work that's being done is being done to mitigate the storms like we saw last year, that 2 to 5 year event, 2 to 5%. I need to stop using that 2 to 5 year. So a 2 to 5% storm means we'll have a 95% chance every year of seeing the kind of storms that we saw last year. This kind of mitigation that we talked about tonight is to do that. If we have that 1% storm, or that 5% storm, the 1 in 100 times, all bets are off with all of this mitigation. And that's where we pick up from last year. We're picking up with the same kind of preparedness that we did last year, the same kind of warning systems that we did last year. And the number one piece in this is that we all need to take individual responsibility for ourselves, individual responsibility for our businesses, and help our neighbors out. So what I'm going to talk about is what we did last year and what we're doing this year to help you know about what's going on. So last year, our message to you was know your risk, make a plan, and improve your outcome. And I want to drive that home. Know your risk, make your plan, and improve your outcome. So part of knowing your risk is knowing when the risk comes. And that's where partly it's my job and partly it's your job. So what you have available to you are some warning systems. So let's assume you know the risk, you've made your plan, now you need to know when to activate that plan. Some of the systems you have in place, you have the National Weather Service alerting system, you have the news media, you have the internet, and you have our warning systems. So the National Weather Service is the one where most of us get all of our information. It's partly where the news media gets their information and where the internet's getting it. So if you're connected to the National Weather Service, that's one really good place. I encourage you not to have just one single point of information. All of us together will publish these warnings based on the hierarchy that the National Weather Service publishes. So the first one is the weather advisory, and these are not necessarily hierarchical. So a National Weather Service flash flood advisory means that there is rain, it's enough to worry about, but it's probably going to be okay. So you most likely will have seen a flash flood watch before you see an advisory. The flash flood watch means that a storm is approaching. There's a very high likelihood that that storm could bring flash flood activity. Pay very close attention. So then if you hear an advisory, it's almost, take a little bit breather, but don't let your guard completely down. The big deal is the National Weather Service flash flood warning. When that warning is issued, that means conditions are very likely that we're going to have a flash flood or a flash flood is occurring. That makes it a little bit different than tornado warnings. When tornado warnings are in place, that means something has touched the ground. So we have a little bit of ambiguity in our system here. However, is the flash flood warning is the big trigger for everything that goes on around us. That's when CDOT closes Highway 24, and that's when the region begins to put in place the actions that we put in place to try to save lives here, or prevent people from getting into situations that we don't want them to. So let me say one moment of thanks to our fire department and all of the great work that they did last year. We had, the applause should be bigger in just a moment. So Jack mentioned the 4 or 5 storms, the big storms we had last year. We actually had 13 events where the National Weather Service issued a warning. The fire department came out, staffed that incident command center, and was ready to go to save lives with upwards of 90, sometimes over 100 responders each time that warning went in place. So when you think about the times when we actually had problems here, at least double, sometimes triple that, and they brought that many folks in, volunteers and other agencies from around us, for us. And that's absolutely incredible that they could rally those kind of resources to be ready to save lives. And they sat there for the hours that it took until the warnings went off. So we have a lot to be thankful for the fantastic volunteer fire system that we have here. So the warning is when things start. Another available emergency notification system is we call it ENS. It's often referred to as reverse 911. That one you need to go to elpasoteller911.org and sign up. If you subscribe, you must subscribe your cell phones. Your home hardline phones are already subscribed. If you have voice over internet or one of the cable providers bringing your telephone service in, it might be in the system, it might not. So you still need to go out there and make sure that you are subscribed. You'll get text messages and you'll get voice messages when we ask the 911 center to launch a message. And we usually do that in concert with the warning system. And one of the big questions I've gotten over the last year is, when does the siren go off, or why isn't the siren going off, or why didn't the siren go off? We've deliberately made another step in the warning process here with the siren. So when the flash flood warning is issued, you heard us talk about, we put up spotters, we have these sensors in place. When we know that water is moving, so we know flash flooding is occurring, that's when the siren goes off. So my message to you is, if you hear that siren going off, that's a run for your life scenario. Don't go down to the creek to see if it's flash flooding or not. Get to higher ground. Reverend Dave's got the storm shelter open, and there's a place to get there and stay dry until the storm comes back. All right, now this is probably where I'll earn my paycheck tonight. Let's talk about the road closures. Jack, if you can bring up the Google Earth. So when the flash flood warnings are issued, I already said, our partners at CDOT are closing Highway 24. Our partners at Colorado Springs PD are closing Highway 24 at 31st Street. The State Patrol is taking Serpentine Road and probably the off-ramps. The city police, again, are taking Ridge Road, and we have prioritized a number of closure points through town to try to keep people off Manitou Avenue. And the reason is, hopefully this will give you a much better understanding of what's going on here. So we've talked about Waldo Canyon. It's up in here. When Waldo Canyon flushes, it comes this way. When Williams Canyon flushes, it comes this way. Do you see what's happening here? This is Manitou Avenue. Those two very large pieces of water meet, and it's Manitou Avenue. And how do you get away from Manitou Avenue when water's coming? Not very likely when it's that 5% storm that is our worst case scenario. And because we don't have the means to know if it's going to be a storm like August 10th or whether it's going to be the one that we all hope we never get. So we're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best here. When Highway 24 is closed, all good tourists try to find their way around, right? And a number of our good neighbors here try to find their ways home. So folks are trying to circumvent these road closures. I know you want to get home. I know the people up the pass want to get home. I know our tourists, they've had enough here. They want to get up to Woodland Park and see what it's like up there. So they're starting to get, if we're not blocking the roads on Manitou Avenue, they're exiting the highway, they're coming onto Manitou Avenue. And the worst case scenario for me is to have a line of cars from here, waiting to get back onto Manitou Avenue, to the arch here, waiting to get back onto Highway 24, when that big flush comes through. So we're talking, I've seen videos from other burn scar flash floods where the wall of water coming through covers an apple orchard. Okay, so we don't have the width of an apple orchard to mitigate this. That's what I'm trying to do, is keep people off Manitou Avenue. So the question of I only live right there, can I get to my neighborhood? One car is not an issue. It's 100 cars when I've got people that I don't know if they live here or if they're from Florida, and they have no idea where they're going or what the problem is and why we're closing. So we're working to the lowest common denominator. What you can do to help us, if you're not in Manitou and the flash flood warning is issued, stay where you are, stay safe. Don't try to get home. Wait for the warning to clear and then come home. It's stressful, I know that. You worry about your family, you worry about your property, you worry about your pets. But you can't help them if you get caught up in a flash flood. Right? You can't help us, help these other people who don't have any idea what's going on here if we're contributing to the problem. So I need your help in this. I know it takes a long time, it's frustrating to our businesses, but our number one goal in this is to keep people from getting killed. Our number two goal is to keep our property from being damaged. The road closures aren't going to stop our property from being damaged. It's back to that, trying to protect people. And in some cases, I've got to try to protect them from themselves. The fewer I have to try to deal with, the easier it is. The other thing I ask you to please be patient with our cops. They're standing out there in the pouring rain trying to keep people from putting themselves in dangerous situations. And our nerves get a little thin sometimes. We get a little frustrated with folks who just want to drive around our roadblock. I've had this thought of, if I stopped you at the roadblock and said, yeah, there's a guy with a rifle there and he's just cracking off shots every now and then, you still want to go through? It's sort of that sort of scenario. We don't know when the rounds are going to be fired, but we got a pretty good concern that it might happen. So please work with us on this. Please be patient. I absolutely don't want to close the roads any more than we have to, and I promise to you we will get them open as quickly as we can determine that it's safe. The last point I want to chat with you about is what's happening with the volunteer system when we're running an incident here. The early stages of an incident involve those life safety efforts. How do we keep people safe? How do we keep them from getting into situations that cause them to be unsafe, hurt, or killed? How do we rescue those that need to be rescued? And then, as quickly as possible, reestablish emergency services. So, number one is keep people safe, get people safe. The next part of the mission for us is to reestablish the roads and the infrastructure so that emergency services can move. If we have gas lines broken, we have people that need medical attention, we can get our fire trucks and ambulances and police cars in to help people that need help and then we start down towards the property preservation and restoration piece. So when volunteers start to show up, it sometimes could take us a day or two, or in a really bad scenario, weeks, to get to the point where we can just reestablish emergency services. We're working on developing systems, or we have developed systems to help manage volunteers. We are using existing systems for ordering volunteers who are already associated with a mission-identified organization like the Red Cross or the Salvation Army. Liz, you want to help me with a couple others?
Samaritan's Purse.
Samaritan's Purse, our food clinics, CUSP. So those people, we already have a mission identified for them. If you believe that you might want to volunteer during an event, I strongly encourage you to volunteer in advance so we know, or you know, what your mission is, and we're not trying to have you as a round peg fit in the square hole. We don't need to vet you and teach you and train you. You've already gotten what it needs to join the mission, and we can get you working a lot sooner. That said, we know we're going to have spontaneous volunteers, and we've got a system in place to try to catch them at the gate, if you will, get their skills identified and get them out there working as quickly as we can. But again, be patient with us. That process takes a little bit of time to get in place and get moving, and we need to know who's there. One of the rules in incident command is that everybody goes home at night. So the rule is you check in, we know you're here, you check out, we know you leave, we know you got home okay.
Well, Chief, that it seems like a great opportunity to ask Dean Stewart, perhaps, if you're done with your formal presentation. I know there's a lot of questions for Chief Ribeiro, but we do have only 3 other folks that we wanted to hear from tonight. We'll be around to answer questions as long as you have them, so we won't be cutting that short.
That's what I have there.
Thank you, Chief.
Well, when I think of public servants, in addition to the first responders in the back of the room, I think of these folks right here who are working very, very hard for all of us. Could you thank them as well? And if Becky's still here, I wanted to mention that the El Paso County Bar Association is planting 1,000 seedlings on May 17th up on the Pyramid Mountain area above Cascade. We'd be glad to have help, so you can see me after if anybody's interested in that. How many of you volunteered last year? How many of you showed up with a shovel or something else on Manitou Avenue after the flood? A whole lot of people did. One of the issues the chief was talking about was what they termed spontaneous volunteers. And I think all of us wanted to immediately go down there and help. And it's a curious phenomenon, but insurance companies need to show up before we do in order to make sure that people get the help they actually paid for with their policies. So we all have to be patient with that instinct, and one of the things we're doing in asking for volunteers this time around is to be more efficient, more effective in providing that help. So when Incident Command calls out and says, we need 10 people at this location in 30 minutes, then we have a list of folks we can call and say, can you get organized, get down here, we're ready to go. The Manitou Arts Center will continue to serve as a center for volunteers in the event of an emergency, and so we want people to show up there, not show up on the avenue, especially if they're trying to keep people off the avenue, and we want to be able to do that in as effective a manner as we possibly can. So really the reason I'm here tonight is to tell you briefly about what MRF is, the Manitou Emergency Recovery Fund. It was established last fall really as a way to get donations funneled in the right direction where they're needed. People were calling me saying, where can I donate? And at that point, we didn't have a specific place to see those donations happen. So MRF is set up as a Pikes Peak Community Foundation sponsored fund. Checks are actually made payable to Pikes Peak Community Foundation, referencing MRF, and what we desperately need those funds to be able to assist when these emergencies happen. The mission of MRF is to raise and strategically invest funds in support of Manitou Springs emergency community needs resulting from natural disasters. So a very broad charge there. We can't give grants to individuals or businesses, but we can give grants to nonprofits who help people in those circumstances, and we can give grants to governmental agencies. So we've raised about $70,000. We've made a grant to help the city with some of their matching funds. We've made a grant to the Manitou Arts Center to defray some of their costs, to the community church to defray some of their costs as they stood up as a shelter during the event. So we're obviously all hoping for the best this season, but we want to be prepared for the worst. So there is a donation form in back that has the address for the Pikes Peak Community Fund on it, and I'd really encourage you to take a look at that and please consider a donation for that. Obviously, donations will occur when the event happens, but we'd like to be prepared ahead of time, so if you can consider that, that would be great. We also would like very much for, as the chief suggested, for volunteers to sign up ahead of time. So we've got volunteer sign-up sheets. Please get your name on there if you're interested, if you have some particular skills or just a willingness to help. We can get your contact information on there. There's a place on there that says special skills, and if you say, I'm really good with a shovel, that's a special skill. We'd be glad to know that, and we'd be glad to have that information so we can build that list and then organize those folks to assist when they're most needed. We met this morning with VOAD. Some of you may be familiar with that organization. It's a pretty new group of people. There's actually a national VOAD, and there are different state VOADs. It's volunteer organizations active in disasters. And the good news that I took away from that meeting this morning over at the Manitou Arts Center, this was a group of many, many organizations from the Pikes Peak region who are there for all of us. They really we're not alone when that disaster occurs. And these folks from the Red Cross, from CUSP was there, I think, many other organizations were there this morning, and they are all prepared to help. So we know that help is out there. We want to be as organized as we can be, and obviously those people as well are looking for volunteers. We've got Red Cross and Aspen Point here tonight at back tables, so if you're interested, some people, the last time we did a public meeting, they said, gee, I don't know, I'm disabled myself, I'm not sure I can get out there with a shovel, but I think I could help the Red Cross make phone calls. That's great. They're here, they really want volunteers. They told me before the meeting tonight, we're still actively looking for volunteers. So if you're interested in their work, please sign up with them. So those tables are in the back, a MRF table for volunteers, Red Cross as well, and Aspen Point. If you're interested, we really, really need your help. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. My name is Karen King, and I am part of the Community Animal Response Team. We call ourselves CART members. It's being led and organized by the Humane Society, and our goal is to make sure that the health and welfare of animals are protected before, during, and after a disaster. So one of the things I want to talk to you about tonight briefly is pet preparedness. The most important thing you can do is microchip your animal. It's a very simple process. I made several phone calls today. I discovered that there's a wide range of pricing, probably as low as $37, but that means that if you and your animal are separated, we will have a way to contact you immediately. And if your animal already is microchipped, please make sure that that's up to date. The worst thing you could have happen is an old phone number, and we've got your animal with a number where we can't reach you. It's also very important that your animals are tagged. And I don't know about you, you can't see it right now, but I have a very simple tag up here for my cat. How the cat gets out of the collar periodically, I have no idea. But if that happens at home, that can happen in the middle of chaos. So if they lose that tag and they aren't microchipped, we still can't connect you with that lost animal. So don't lull yourself into feeling confident that you have your animal with a tag and your name and number on it, because that can easily be separated. The third thing that you can easily do is to take a picture of you and that beloved little fur ball and put it on your cell phone. So that again, if you're separated and we have animals, we can see that you and that animal belong together. So those are three very simple things that you can do to identify your animals prior to a disaster. We have talked about and heard about to-go kits for humans. We need to have a to-go kit for our animals so that you have food readily available. I have a container at home. If something happens, I've got food, I have medications if needed, I have leashes, even for the cats, and toys so that if the cats have to be crated, they have something that they're familiar with. I would also grab a t-shirt that smells like me and throw it in that darn carrier. There's a reason why people laugh when they say they're trying to herd cats. Okay, these animals, or these cats, do not like to ride in cars typically, and they are not comfortable being crated. So we know that there's an opportunity that we're going to have to evacuate with these animals. Pull those crates out. Animals, cats, love to get in every stinking size box that there is. Let them get in a crate, be familiar with it, put treats in there so that if you have to evacuate with them, it will make it a lot easier for not only the cat, but also you. Is there another slide after that? Okay. Neighborhood watches. You know, we just heard the chief talk about when people can't get home because a road is closed. And we know, actually, that happened to someone in my house last year. So in our little neighborhood, we know that that's a possibility. And everyone on our street has an animal. And so we have shared our schedules. We have keys to each other's homes. We know, or I know where my next door neighbor's to-go kit is, so that if we get stuck, we can take care of each other and take care of those animals. I know that if my neighbor can't get home, she's going to feel a lot better off knowing that we already have a plan and we're going to take care of those animals. In our training, and as CART members, we go through training every single month to be ready for a disaster. In our training, I've actually seen a picture of a dog in, wasn't a dog house, but some kind of structure, chained, and the water was up to its chest. Okay? Now the good news is we saw a picture of that, so we know that that animal was rescued. Okay? But if you have to leave, or if you're evacuating, don't think I'll come back for my animals later. Take those animals with you right then and there. And if you are not at home, be sure that you pick up one of these stickers that we have, and you can't see it in my hand, but it's over at that first table. It identifies how many animals you have in your home. Okay, and an even better idea that I heard from somebody who lives over on Canyon tonight is they have pictures of their animals on their front door that says, please rescue me. So if you're not able to be at home, do something so that your animals are protected. Over on the table here, in the front table, we have, in addition to the stickers, there are 2 brochures. There's a brochure that talks about how to prepare for your pet with greater detail, and there's also information on the CART team because we are training people in advance, and if you'd like to join us, there's information on that as well. Here you go.
Thank you, Karen. Saving the best for last, we'd like to hear from Leslie Lewis about all the good work being done down at the Manitou Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you very much. I am Leslie Lewis with Manitou Springs Chamber of Commerce, Visitors Bureau, and Office of Economic Development. Get it all in there. Our job is to still get people into town. So after we've had some kind of situation, we need to be able to let people know that our businesses are open, and we need their sales tax dollars for our city budget. So this year we started the year with a $242,800 marketing budget. $85,000 of that we were fortunate enough to get in grants. The first grant that we received was a matching grant from the Colorado Tourism Office for $25,000, and then we received a $50,000 grant from the Office of Emergency Management administered through the Red Cross, and then we've received so far $10,000 in Pikes Peak Community Foundation funds. So we're thrilled to be able to do that. The things that we're working on with that, we created a strategic marketing plan with the help of Blakely & Company, which is a public relations firm. They're doing our ad designs for us this year. And we'll be doing a media roundtable coming up May 13th so that we can have the media educated on all the things that have been happening instead of seeing those flood pictures every time you turn on the news and they talk about a meeting. We don't want to scare the visitors on the national level like we have previously. So, part of our plan includes setting aside $25,000 of that money so that we can immediately react. Most of it we have a plan in place, but that $25,000 we're going to hold on to, and if we have a situation, then as soon as that situation is passed, we can put Blakely & Company mobilized to get the word out that Manitou Springs is safe, it's open for business, and to come visit. We are currently designing a new website. Our current website is not getting the traffic, it's not as dynamic as it needs to be. Not only to provide information to you as community members, but to visitors who want to come to the area. The new site will be created in responsive design, so it doesn't matter if you're trying to look at it on your phone, on your iPad, or on your desktop computer. It'll all look exactly the same and provide all the information you need. We're also in the middle of launching a digital campaign. Texas and Denver are going to be two of our focal areas with that campaign, and we've signed a social media contract. Susan Wolbrook is a local resident who's doing all of our social media and doing a great job of letting anybody who's on Facebook know exactly what's going on in Manitou and encouraging you to come down. We are working in collaboration with the Mineral Springs Foundation, Peak Living, to create an enhanced Mineral Springs experience. We are working with them. There's going to be new signage going up. Unfortunately, it's not going to be in place by this summer, but we are getting those designed now and hopefully will be in place this fall. They're to the standards of the National Park System signage. We're also going to have a wayfinder painted on concrete so you can walk spring to spring if you don't know where they all are by following the stamps or the paint symbols on the concrete. We're also hoping to bring back the Spring About Tours for any of you who have done those in the past. Those will be going on. We will be doing some fall events once we get through summer, hopefully without any incidents, like we did last fall with the Manitou celebration. Businesses running specials in downtown and creating a lot of festive activities, and that'll be going on the same time as a new activity that Peak Living Project and some other groups are working on called Manifest. So we're collaborating with a lot of groups to create entertainment downtown. We'll have summer concerts again this summer, things like that. The most important thing that we can do, as I told Reverend Hunting earlier, is to have current information from the city, from the businesses, so that you as residents can call and ask questions, and we'll have accurate and current information. We could also give out information to you from businesses as the businesses keep us current, and we can give information to the visitors. Because when we start having issues around here, our phone starts ringing off the hook with visitors calling from Texas asking if it's still safe, asking if they can come down from Denver. Unfortunately, there are still people who think Manitou washed away in the last flood. And we're hearing it all the time. Oh, you are there. Yes, we are. So our job is to promote the city and have all kinds of activities going on. And I'm going to take just a second and remind you all, if you haven't heard, the health fair is going on Saturday at Community Congregational Church. We've got a lot of low-cost screenings as well as free screenings that'll be available. Aspen Point will be there, as well as some other organizations, and I encourage you to come to that as well. And we'll be doing Spring About tours at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. from that location. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Maybe get the lights back on. That'd be great. Thank you. I hope you all found this informative.
Yes.
And really appreciate all of our regional partners, everybody being up here, giving up their evening to help inform us. All the information you've heard tonight will be on our website within the next few days. And I know El Paso County's been doing a great job of getting this information posted. There'll be a video of tonight's presentations.
Yeah, we have, we'll let the mayor know. Hopefully, all of you, if you haven't, make sure you sign in. So we'll add you to a regular list of just notifications. But we have a website that's waldorecovery.com. And also you can go to elpasoco.com and go to our YouTube channel. We'll let you know when that's posted so that if somebody wasn't able to come tonight and wants to see the presentations, they can sit through a couple hours of YouTube, but certainly it will give them the information. I think this was a great opportunity to get information from all different aspects. I did want to point out Tom Gonzalez is here as well from the health department. Tom's specialty is environmental services, and so if you have questions on septics and your health concerns, restaurant inspections, those kinds of things, he's the guy to talk to. So don't mean to make you a target there, but thanks for coming.
And we're still available for questions, so if anybody has one, feel free to come up to the microphone or come on up, and as we break up here, just grab somebody you want to talk to and ask them a question. So if anybody has one for the microphone, great. If not, thank you all very much for coming, and let's be safe and keep a positive attitude.